Hello and welcome. India's IT services industry was innovative 25 years ago, but is it innovative enough today? And more importantly, is it innovative to take on the big challenges of going digital? That's the question I'm posing to Soumitra Dutta, former Dean of the S.C. Johnson School, College of Business at Cornell, and also Professor there. Professor Dutta, thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you.
I thought I'll pick up a statement that you made, and that Indian IT did the first big thing about 25 years ago, but there's never been anything significant since then. And of course, we've seen all these Chinese companies come up and do well. But take us through what's really the big challenge facing India's IT industry from your vantage point as you see it. And
so I think it's a very important question that you're raising. And this is a question not just about the IT industry, it's about India's economy as a whole. So if you look at the real success of the IT industry was back 25 years ago, or 30 years ago when it came up with this global offshoring model. That was the process innovation, the software was developed. Indian software programmers were excellent, the leadership was present, and those companies today, Wipro, TCS and others have become globally successful. So the success of the Indian IT companies is undeniable and it is very strong and something we should be proud of. The question arises, what's happening to the economy as a whole and how is technology affecting the economy as a whole. So we all know the economy is becoming more digital. And digital economy essentially means a lot of the transactions, interactions are moving online. And the question really is, does India have a player in that sector or not? And the answer unfortunately is India was too late, the current players are too small, and essentially on the global stage we have the American players and we have the Chinese players. And so I think that's where we see a gap. The question really also, which is interesting to ask, is which companies could potentially have been, if there was an Alibaba of India, which company could have potentially been? Was it an existing TCS or Infosys or Wipro? Or would it have been a startup like Alibaba 15 years ago? So I think that's where the question comes in. So it's not that the IT sector wasn't innovative or it's not innovative. The question is, how come we don't have a leader in the digital economy?
Right. But Alibaba is let's say an e-commerce company primarily and then a payments company and so on. So would you have expected a TCS to become a...
That's a good question. Yeah. It's a question in terms of, the capability was there. And the question is, at some point, you have to make the judgment in terms of business model transition, in terms of is the infrastructure ready for the kind of development. Mobile phone penetration today is 400 million. Earlier it was even much lower. So I think India's infrastructure has developed at a much slower pace as compared to China. And I really believe that now India has to work very hard to play catch up. So I think to create some local players that can have the kind of global dominance, it has to actually have some strong leadership from some strong players. And the question is, the leadership can come from the IT sector, can come from other sectors too.
Right. So if I were to ask you for a prognosis in some ways of 2018 and onwards, in this context of artificial intelligence and robotics, and obviously companies are trying to adapt. I was just talking to a CEO of a medium-sized IT services company who said that he takes comfort from the fact that the young people who are coming into his workforce are far more adaptive and swifter in responding than perhaps people in earlier generations were.
So I think, if you ask me, for example, there are disruptions, technology disruptions. And what China was able to do very effectively was exploit the disruption of the internet and mobile and really create these Alibabas and Tencents and so on. So that was really the technology disruption that it exploited. I think what we have in front of us is AI presents another possible technology disruption of massive scale. And I think India has the potential out here, if it really wants to create something big using next disruption, AI could be that. Because it's too late today to just go back to the classical mobile internet model and try and hope to create something in that space. That space is pretty much taken by the few giants. So I think we have to look at the next disruption, and AI potentially could be that disruption. So I think India could find the next generation, because even if the companies today in the space of, let's say, using AI heavily for automating parts of the digital economy are small, if the technology stays as we all predict it will, it will become a big thing in the future.
Right. So you're also authoring the World Economic Forum Global Information Technology Report. So for 2018, as you've been in previous years, what are the big mega trends or the global trends that you're seeing which we should be sitting here looking at more carefully?
So I think the mega trends we are seeing from the Technology Index report for the last few years is, of course, technology is becoming prevalent. The impact is becoming more and more important and widespread. I think the measurement of impact is something that is not done very well, so we have to become better as organizations or in countries in measuring impact much more carefully. So let's say, for example, Digital India. How do you actually measure the impact of that? I think that's an important element that has to be designed in the organization. But a bigger concern that I have is, based on the data that we have, looking at analysis several years, we find that the digital divide across the world is not decreasing, it is increasing. And unless there is some major action taken by the government in concert with, in partnership with the private sector, that gap may not decrease at a fast enough pace. And I think what we are seeing this on a global scale is, as the gap, digital divide increases, the risks of higher inequality increasing is higher.
I was actually going to ask you, so is this linked to inequality
as well? It leads to that because, let's assume that you have access to high quality bandwidth internet. You have access to good quality infrastructure. You have good education. You have a good environment for political, social, regulatory environments. Your ability to use technology for business is actually higher. If you don't have high quality bandwidth, you can't actually do any of that. Even if you have high quality bandwidth, but you don't have education, you can't actually get the benefits. So it's like, different pieces of a chain. So you need all the chain pieces to be strong to be able to get the benefits of technology. And if the chain is actually weak, or even one link is weak, then you actually have problems.
Right. So you're saying this is one important theme in the next year or two, the fact that the digital divide is actually increasing when we all think intuitively that it should be decreasing.
Yeah, because people get a little bit misled by the fact that everyone has a mobile phone. And the reality is the quality of access is dramatically different. So even, for example, look at the proportion of people who have high quality bandwidth access on the mobile phones. It's actually a very small proportion of Indian population or even global population. So that's a hard fact from data.
Right. And if I were to ask you to put the digital world in the context of the overall the world or the global economy, how are things looking and what are you looking out for?
So as I said, I think today it's very hard to separate the digital economy from the real economy. So the two are coming together more and more. So I think more and more what you're finding is the blurring of the physical and digital world is coming, becoming a reality. So it's very hard to separate the digital economy from the real economy, because real economy is the digital economy by and large. Second, I think what I would say is the digital sector as a whole, the companies that provide service sector, are going to see rapid growth. So they are growing, and that's a natural consequence of the fact technology is being used more and more, and people are deploying technology in multiple sectors and everything else. So I see all the digital service companies growing in a very healthy 10, 15, 20, 30% growth rates. And I think that's going to continue for the foreseeable future.
Right. And finally, what's the one thing that you're personally looking out for or watching out for in the next year or two in the technology-induced space?
No, I think one thing that I'm curious, is will emerging markets be able to leapfrog with technology? I go to many conferences, and today I listened to Prime Minister Modi. I listened to him also in Dubai, and he was presenting in Dubai last week and in the Dubai World Government Summit. Everyone is talking about technology. You look at India, everyone's talking about technology. Same thing in China. So I see that emerging markets, the leadership is much more aware about technology and using technology much more. I don't see that same level of focus on technology in the leadership, in the voices of leadership in the developed world. So you don't see President Trump talking about digital economy that much. And the same is true for a lot of leaders.
Using it all the time.
Well, even the user is one part of it, not Twitter, but it's not on the top of mind in terms of digital technologies transforming the economy, providing better future, providing better lives. It's not there to the same degree on the minds of a lot of leaders in the developed world. So what I see is very interesting is will emerging markets be able to leapfrog successfully leveraging technology? China has done that to some degree. India did it to some degree in the last generation of technology. And I think that's an interesting phenomenon to see, will technology provide that golden path for emerging markets in the future?
Right. That's a fascinating note to end on. Thank you, Professor Dutta, for
Thank
speaking
you.
with us.